what happened next was Strawberry Studios was doing quite well now. The notion of having a studio out in the sticks was kind of beginning to make some kind of sense, because there were more and more people coming from the north of England and looking for places to go, which didn't involve them going to London or America. So people were booking into the studio, but there was no production unit there. So we became the house producers, and the house producers essentially was the petri dish of 10cc. It was those four people. They were the house producers and the house band in one package. And we had all manner of stuff coming through the doors, but we were the people that made it happen.
And then you guys ended up forming in what, 72, I think?
Probably earlier. Yeah, I'd say from sort of 70, 71 until the formation of the band, whenever that was. We were very, very busy playing sessions, producing sessions for anybody and everything that came through the door, from football teams to singers. You know, it was crazy. It was more like a Woody Allen film than it was like the music business. You know, it was crazy.
Who came up with the idea, we're so good as a band for other people, why don't we just do this ourselves?
It was Neil Sedaka. We produced and were the house band for 2 albums with Neil. And at some point he said, well, you guys play great together. That's one thing we didn't actually do much during those years, was play together as a band.
Were you all tracking separately?
Yeah, but we were all saying, well, why don't we try some echo on this? Why don't we run that sound through this thing? We were producing, we were trying experimental ideas at the expense of other people's music, if you like. We were trying to be something, we didn't know what, but actually sitting down and just playing as a band didn't actually happen until we did those albums with Neil. Mm-hmm. They said, you guys play great together, why don't you form a band? And we hadn't really thought of it. And so we said, okay, why not? So we recorded a couple of tracks, and we sent one called Waterfall to Apple Corps, the Beatles version of Apple. And that was kind of the beginning of us as a band. They didn't release that particular track. It became a B-side for something we wrote in half an hour to help that along. But that was the start of the band. It's such a simple thing, isn't it? So we played together, we produced together. Why don't we become a band? Ding. It doesn't take a great deal of genius to come up with that, but it took somebody else to.
It's funny how sometimes it's the most obvious things that you don't see,
I think maybe we weren't looking for the obvious thing. Maybe.
It's a kind of an artistic mindset. Sometimes a lot of people, when they're so into the art that they're doing, they don't just see what's right in front of them. I feel like there's a lot of people who do that, so I don't think that's completely out of the normal.
No, wood for the trees and all that stuff.
Yeah. So then, when the band really starts taking off, what was specifically your mentality once you had all this music coming out and it's doing well? Were you like, let's just focus on putting out as much music as possible, riding the wave? Getting as much stuff out? We're really trying to keep this going, or were you just enjoying it? Like I'm gonna guess that it's the second one because of how your reaction to the other things were. But were you just like enjoying it? Like, man, this is clicking. I can go buy myself another sports car. I'm good.
No. We were dedicated. Once there was a certain point, and I think it's when we got our first recording contract. We got a recording contract. I don't think it was a great contract, but we were professionals. We were in the band, and the band had somehow started to do reasonably well, and we were having a great time. We were essentially studio people. We were essentially a group of people who flourished in the studio, and that was our domain. That was our place of work. we hadn't as yet really thought about performing live too much. It was really all about crafting records. And we did take on the mantle of the Beatles in terms of trying to create incredible pieces of sound. That was our goal. And we had a ball. We loved it. The recording studio became the fifth member of the band. And the amazing thing was, because we were up north, away from the center of the music business, we didn't get record company executives dropping up to see us, dropping into the studio to see us, to see how we were getting on, how this track was working out, and saying things like, you can't say fuck in the chorus. We didn't get that happening. Of course, you can't, not really. But we were of the chemistry was interesting, because it became evident after a while that there were two approaches going on simultaneously. Graham and Eric were much more, shall we say, professional and wedded to the idea of crafting perfect songs than myself and Lol were. We were art school kids who were prepared to try anything and everything to discover something that we didn't know existed yet. So it was the fusion of those two things in the Petri dish that made 10cc sound like it did. And that was fun.